Hi there. It's we're back for part two of the Afghan configuration, Riffley's roundtable, and this time around I want to talk about another poster, American Everyman. It's somebody I actually know a little bit. I've chit-chatted with him maybe once or twice online. He was kind enough to profile one of my earlier videos, which is very nice of him. And I did want to say I've been subscribed to him a little bit longer than Corrupted Paul's show, and I wanted to say something about the jokey Rokana over horror music thing. I put that together, and not Corrupted Paul. So just in case anybody gets mad, get mad at me. Anyway, American Everyman wanted to bring up this video that he put up recently, I think a couple days ago, end of August. Because it's about our favorite subject again, Bill Maher, and about Afghanistan. So Bill's been kind of pimping this withdrawal and the whole sort of imperial project in Afghanistan. I assume for his last show, perhaps his show before it. I have not really been watching him, but Scott, American Everyman, is doing it, so I don't have to, which is nice. So, but let's discuss some of the old things that he is repeating. So, what Scott, the American Everyman, is discussing is particularly a bit that Bill Maher does on his show, where he is, as before, I believe this is a different show, but it may be a different segment, basically making the same point that the United States may have sort of some warts. Some blemishes in its record, but it's still, the greatest country, the indispensable country, and all this sort of blather. And the worst thing about the United States is how much its citizens complain about it. So Scott will definitely do. You want to probably look this up because he does a better job than I imagine he's going to do. Bill Maher is a comedian, so maybe he's being funny. But he talks about, go hop in a plane and, fly out to Afghanistan, fly out to, some of these places and find out how terrible the living conditions are there and how much better they are here. And what he says is, I'm talking to some immigrants, and what these immigrants tell me is that the U.S. is so great, and I don't understand why you complain about your own country so much. And so, whenever my significant other and I are sitting around and watching Bill Maher, which we do sometimes when there's nothing else on, like that ever happens these days, she always is just going, I can't believe that he doesn't understand his own position. It's that he has this bit where he talks about his solar panels. He's trying to install solar panels on his house. I assume that's the one in, I believe it was Santa Barbara. These are all things I didn't know about Bill Maher before I watched American Everyman's channel, but he apparently has at least two homes, one in Santa Barbara and another, as we'll discover. He may have more. He seems to be richer than I would imagine. I would have thought that he would have a few $1 million, but he appears to be quite a bit more wealthy than that. And so these immigrants that he's talking to are his maids and servants.
Bill Maher concluded. Here's where he talks about the immigrants that he met. Ask your maid. Ask your Uber driver. Ask the Asian woman giving you a massage. America may not be the country of your faculty lounge and your Twitter dreams, but no one here tries to escape by hanging onto an airplane. No, we wait till we get inside the plane to fight. And only because they cut off the beverage service. End quote. That's Bill Maher RICHSPLAINing. RICHSPLAINing. How much better America is than Afghanistan. Your maid, your Asian masseuse.
Right? So it's pretty hilarious that he is using this to make himself sound as though he's sort of down with the people and he understands the plight of or the poor subjugated classes in the Middle East and some of these countries that we've been targeting. And I think also one of the things that Scott points out is a lot of the things that Bill Maher says when he paints the paints this Middle Eastern region with the broad brush that he does, is he doesn't seem to he doesn't seem to, or I was going to say he doesn't distinguish, but distinguish is exactly what he does between, the countries we target and the countries we ally with, or the countries we use as, proxies or remote actors, or sort of aircraft carriers. Saudi Arabia is a bit like Israel. It's kind of one of our de facto aircraft carriers in this region. And there's a quote about that that you can go back and unearth. I don't remember where it came from. So basically the complaints that Bill Maher has about places like Afghanistan and Yemen, that these countries that we've targeted also apply to Saudi Arabia and the UAE and some of these other countries that we're allied with. So this whatever this distinction is that Bill Maher is trying to draw, it's frankly a bit confusing, because I mean, it's again, it's a little bit like the rejoinder that Glenn Greenwald confronted him with. This is the flaw in this reasoning. It seems to be so clear that I can't imagine he hasn't thought of it. But he seems to be so myopic that it just really hasn't occurred to him. And the other thing is basically the U.S. role in the Middle East, geopolitically speaking, he seems to be completely sort of oblivious to that. But he's also oblivious, obviously, to his own wealth and the role that plays in his kind of attempting to present himself as someone who understands the Arab mind, right? And he would probably put it that way, behind closed doors. But yeah, so it's an odd perspective that he has cultivated on this, to say the least. So this is an interesting kind of point that I think it's just come up. So okay, first I want to talk about. So when he talks about his talking to his maids and his servants about how great America is. I mean, American Everyman makes the point that they're basically, since they're his employees, it's not like they're going to necessarily give him their honest opinion. They're basically the welfare is tied in with his largesse. So they need to tell him. I would imagine, tell him what he wants to hear. But the other very interesting thing about this, and this is sort of back to my pet project, the screen age, is it turns out Bill Maher, where he is getting his masseuse services.
Here's Bill Maher's Santa Clara. This is on Catalina Island. This is the view from his $1 million condo on Catalina Island. Here's Catalina Island. This is the kind of place that he lives. Right here on the fucking water. Let's get back to the map, so I'll show you exactly what we're talking about here. Yeah, this is what he's talking about. There's L.A. So he flies his private jet. There's an airport on this, and there's only fucking rich people here, and the poor slobs who serve them. You can tell the poor slobs who serve them because they're the ones wearing the masks.
It's in his second home on Catalina Island, and American Everyman gives us a taste of this. It certainly looks quite nice. Some of these shots of Catalina Island might remind you of a certain other island, obviously, that came up in the news in the last few years. And, that's maybe a coincidence, maybe not. But what is definitely probably is a coincidence is that the long hand of Mystery Science Theater, the long shadow, is hard to climb out from under, because they did a movie about Catalina Island back in 1967 called Catalina Caper. And what's funny about this movie, kind of going back to this sort of topic of sort of sex work and the discussion, this sort of submerged discussion of it, is that the mid 60s is coming at the tail end of a sort of a little discussed these days tendency for rich men to help their sort of virgin sons sow their oats by, frankly, paying for them to go to prostitutes. And I've always had this theory that beach party is kind of a way of taking, or sort of laughingly referring to that that history and that tradition but sort of Bowdlerizing it, cleaning it up so it could be shown in theaters for all ages. This is before even the rating system. So basically, it's the beach party, and I haven't gotten around to beach blanket bingo and some of these other ones, but this beach party series, I think, has sort of a sex work subtext to it, which puts Catalina, this Catalina Caper movie in a funny context, because I think that it is tapping into that. It's tapping into that same tradition, which means that I'm thinking that the movie makers of Catalina Caper knew something about the island that perhaps they weren't letting on, or they were referring to sort of obliquely. In any case, I always thought that was kind of an interesting aside. But basically the point is, and the very key thing that Bill Maher seems to be missing, is that wealth isn't an indicator of virtue or value, which I think Bill Maher has internalized that value system so deeply that he really is no longer even aware that he has it. So, when he says, hey, look, my maid says, my masseuse says that, Yemen's a lot worse than the United States. So once again, I mean, Bill Maher is making a point that is at once very obvious and at the same time perfectly ridiculous, because obviously Yemen is not as nice a place to live as the United States. I mean, unless you're fabulously rich. But the reason why is not because the United States is a better country. It's because the United States has stolen, money from Yemen, and stolen the money and resources from, many of these countries in the Middle East. And right now, probably everybody who follows these sorts of videos, these sorts of content providers, is aware that, the United States is working with Saudi Arabia to do a rather terrible, pogrom, I imagine would be the word, of the starvation, deprivation, and war against the people of Yemen. I know I've heard various things about that situation that are quite terrible, but I won't necessarily get into that here. Bill's points here are just simply fatuous, and he doesn't seem to be able to stop making them. I don't really know that his show would have any content if he weren't constantly sort of trying to shore up this American exceptionalist and sort of ironically, kind of a prosperity gospel type of narrative about the wealthier you are, the better you are as a nation. It's a very simplistic worldview. At this point, and I'll close with this, is that Scott makes a point later on, sort of circling back to Afghanistan, because this was essentially the point of the segment that Bill Maher had made, was that we are flying out these refugees, is the term being used from Afghanistan, and presumably some of them will be coming back to the United States. And Bill Maher encourages us to take them into our home, take them into our homes, presumably as maids and masseuses, who knows. But whenever this is discussed, it seems to be discussed as a strictly humanitarian enterprise, and the Afghan refugees are portrayed more or less exclusively as victims of the ravages of the character of the Afghan nation, right? I mean, it's just sort of it's filled with crazy, inscrutable people who subscribe to this 1,000-year-old religion, and everybody's trying to get out. And so anyway, the point that Scott makes about this, so we're going to take these Afghan refugees to our homes to save them from these dastardly dog raping Taliban. And Scott makes the point that, and this is an exercise I don't think most of the people who repeat these narratives typically bother to do.
Could you imagine if we're invaded by fucking Russia, or China, and a large number of people decide to collaborate with the invaders, with the people who are occupying our fucking are they somebody we want when the occupiers leave 20 years fucking later? Are they somebody we want?
Is say, well, what would I do if I were Afghani? How would I feel if something similar to what's happening to them is happening to me? And so Scott talks about, and it seems like a fairly obvious point, and I've made it myself, what if China or Russia, it's a bit of a stretch. It's a bit of a kind of a real thought experiment, because it's sort of geopolitical, it's just geospatial reasons why a mainland invasion of the United States would be difficult to accomplish. Most of them having to do with the two very large oceans that are on either side of it. But of course, if it were Bill Maher, he would say it's because we're just sort of better people. So imagine that China or Russia invades the U.S. and they somehow capitulate. It's actually not that hard to imagine, because with all the military might that we have, we apparently allowed a bunch of Trump guys with spears to just waltz in and swing from the chandeliers in the Capitol building, which was the fourth target on 9/11. And so basically 20 years of the war on terror, and the fourth target on 9/11 allegedly being the reason why we fought the war on terror, was just left to be just sort of overrun by accident. And the narrative there is kind of hilarious, because it seems to be that Trump kind of wanted to overthrow the country, but not really. So he sort of did it halfway. And that's the reason it didn't work, right? Because go invade the Capitol building, but do it peacefully, and then I'll come down and I'll meet you. And then he doesn't bother to come down and meet them. So, if it's a coup, it's not a terribly good one. But the point being, 20 years they've had to shore up the fourth target of the 9/11 attacks. Which was only saved by accident, I don't want to say by accident, but, not through any doing of the U.S. military, at least according to the official story. So make of that what you will. But anyway, so let's say China or Russia does invade the U.S. and they have as much luck as the January 6th Trump tards did. And then they actually show up to finish off take over the U.S. And then, it turns out we were all looking the other way, same way as we were on 9/11, same as we were on January 6th. So I've talked myself into actually believing this totally could happen. But anyway, so now we've got Chinese, Russia troops on every street corner, and a bunch of Americans collaborate with them. So what do you think if eventually the tables were turned and we're able to drive the Chinese and Russians out, the way the Afghans have driven us out, the Afghanis? How do you think those American collaborators would fare? Right? I'll leave that as a rather nasty exercise for the imagination. I think they would fare a little worse than these U.S. service dogs are going to fare. And so basically, think about the Americans who would collaborate with Chinese who invaded them. The Afghan refugees that we're bringing over to our country are basically the analog of that for Afghanistan.
Of course, they got to get the fuck out. They are traitors. Now, in this case, because of the nature of special forces and special operations, not special forces, special operations, proxy armies, terrorists, killers, they also want to hop on a fucking plane and get the fuck out, don't they? Because they can't go to Pakistan. They're not welcome in Iran. Not even welcome in Iraq. So, of course, they want to get out. Bill Maher says you should take them in your house.
And I think that's a pretty cogent point. Is the dominant narrative, which doesn't seem to be getting questioned at all, is that, you know, it's this poor me narrative, poor me story about these Afghan refugees and, you know, what selfless heroes they are. But I think when we bring them into this country, we may have another thing coming.